indeed, this will be a technically challenging mission and an epic journey, as you mentioned. Also, international payload is one highlight of the Chang'e 6 mission. You mentioned scientists from Pakistan and France, and also from other countries are also watching closely as we wait for the moment of blastoff. Thank you so much, Sun-Ye, for bringing us that from Wenchang. Now, to coordinate the launch of Long March 5 rocket, part of the Chang'e 6 lunar mission is not an easy task. CGTN's Wu Lei talks to Liao Guorui, the launch commander of the Long March 5 rocket, and brings us more on the preparations and challenges for this mission.
You have participated in over 40 space launches over the past few years, but this is your first time as a launch commander for the lunar exploration programs. How do you feel about this mission, and how does it compare to the previous ones you've been involved in?
标指挥员呢，相当于是
The launch commander is the principal coordinator at the launch site, who plays the role of connecting the commanding center and the subsystems, communicating all the decisions and procedures. I need to coordinate over 20 subsystems during the launch process. Chang'e 6 is a part of China's lunar exploration project, and I'm very excited and honored to be part of the program. I have done some key analysis and been very familiar with the launch of the Long March 5 rocket.
What are some of the major challenges that you have encountered so far during this mission?
One of the challenges is that this time the Long March 5 rocket had multi-trajectories in a narrow launch window, which meant our entire team had to make plans for different rocket trajectories during the launch. We had to determine which trajectory to be used to carry out the flight mission only 25 seconds before ignition. Time is very limited, so we had to do a lot of planning and preparation for this.
The Chang'e 6 mission is the first attempt to collect samples from the far side of the moon. What do you expect to be found?
We haven't got any sample from the far side of the moon before. This is humans' first attempt to do so. I'm really excited. Human beings still have very limited knowledge of the entire universe, and we hope that through the efforts of generations after generations, we will continue to expand our understanding of unknown space.
All right, now let's hear some more analysis from my guest here in the studio, Professor Yang Yuguang from the Space Transportation Committee at the IAF. Well, Professor Yang, you've accompanied us on many occasions in China's space program. Every time you're here witnessing some great moments and sharing with us your thoughts, your expertise on the importance and the significance of the launch mission. And as mentioned by Sun-Ye, the Chang'e 6 will be operating for 53 days, and the mission involves 11 phases, and every step of the way is important, is pivotal for the success of the mission. Tell us what are your expectations for this mission, and which part will be the most important or difficult?
Well, as you mentioned, I always be witness of the important moment for China's space activities, and I always recognize it is my honor to introduce our space missions to the whole world. And also, I recognize it as my duty as a technician from the China space field to have this responsibility to tell the public how important it is, how necessary it is of our space missions. As you mentioned, that's the series before in 2020 we conducted the Chang'e 5 mission. Just until now, before this Long March 6 mission, the Chang'e 5 mission is the most complicated mission in China aerospace because it has so many steps. So that at that moment, the Chang'e 6 probe is a backup of Chang'e 5, which means if anything wrong, any problem may happen to the Chang'e 5 mission, so after we have found what is wrong and we got improvement, we can in a short period, we can launch the Long March 6 and conduct the sample return from near side of the moon. But you know that the Chang'e 5 is a perfect mission and a complete success. So after that, the role of Chang'e 6 changed this time. So as Sun-Ye mentioned, we will get samples from far side of the moon. Just 4 hours before, in Global Watch, I have already talked with your colleague Song Ning that we both have challenges and opportunities. So for the challenges, that for the Chang'e 5 mission is already the most complex mission we conducted before. But this time, although the Chang'e 6, from the view of hardware, it's quite similar to the Chang'e 5, all composed of 4 spacecraft. From the bottom to up is the orbiter, the returner, the lander, and the ascender. So 4 spacecraft. But it is more complex than the Chang'e 5 mission. You know that you asked which is the most dangerous or risky part. From my view of a technician, the most important or the most risky part will be the lunar orbit rendezvous, which means that the 2 spacecraft rendezvous and dock together in the circumlunar orbit. So you know that
extreme high velocity.
Extremely important, extremely risky, and so high requirement. You know that many people doubt about whether the Apollo program is true or not. One thing is that that in 1960 or 1970s, it's almost
That's about half a century
unbelievable
ago.
that the human being can conduct a docking in the 6th lunar orbit. You know that on the lower orbit, we already have many special coverage on the docking of Shenzhou and the Tiangong space station. That's already very, very difficult. But you know that docking and rendezvous on the lunar orbit more than 380,000 kilometers from the Earth, that's more difficult. And you know that because we don't have much support for especially navigation, which means that the determination of the position and the velocity of the spacecraft. So the measure of the velocity and the position will be the first step for us to get the right operation. Now you already seen the launch pad and also our March-5B launch vehicle. So also, as you mentioned, the launch will be the first step. But this is only the first step. So we have more than more critical steps during the whole process, and each one is critical for us. Right. And if anything wrong happens to one certain step, we cannot do the others later. So this is why it is so challenging. And to be responsible. Okay, 3 minutes
countdown.
T-minus 3 minutes and counting.
Any announcement, any command from the scientists there, the engineers there, is making us
all the ground staff has
breath.
withdrawn from the launch complex.
Right.
So at this moment, as I mentioned, so there will be many critical steps. For instance, the rotation or the withdrawal of the service arms from the previously attached to the launch tower. Right. The cables, the pipes. You may notice that maybe at this moment the white focus has already disappeared.
That's right.
So that means that the refueling process has already been ended.
Completed.
Yes. So it's all on its own. And during these following seconds, we will also transfer the electricity power supply from the service tower to our launch vehicle itself to use the storage batteries on board our Long March 5 launch vehicle.
Sure. Now, 2 minutes before the launch, we'd like to give our viewers a little bit more background on this mission. The Chang'e 6 spacecraft will embark on a 53-day journey to the far side of the moon and back, returning lunar soil and rocks to Earth.
Great. That's what I mentioned. The arms will turn from
Finally being detached from the carrier rocket.
And all kinds of cables.
Is that a final sign that all systems go? The rocket is ready to go.
Yeah.
As scheduled.
As we mentioned, all kinds of cables detached from the launch vehicle. We also have
really
air conditioners in the payload fairing.
And really at this moment, I'm pretty sure that the engineers there, us and viewers watching this moment are holding their breaths.
Yes.
And again, the highlight of this mission is that the Chang'e 6 will be traveling to the far side of the moon, retrieve lunar samples, and bring them back to Earth. And if successful, this will be a history-making mission. 1 minute countdown from the launch pad in Wenchang in southern China's Hainan province.
You can see the 4 boosters.
50 seconds countdown. Well, certainly this mission will help us understand the Earth's formation, its evolution over billions of years. 30 seconds countdown.
The onboard computer is now in charge of everything.
All right. And certainly we'll bring you every detail from the launch as the rocket blasts off. Final 10 seconds countdown.
3, 2, 1, ignition.
You're now watching live feed from Wenchang Satellite Launch Center. China's Chang'e 6 mission blasts off into the sky. It's all systems go, Professor Yang.
So magnificent. And now the tower is clear.
It's now starting its epic journey to the moon.
So at the moment, 17 seconds after liftoff will be the pitch over, change the direction.
Right.
And now you can see this is a video captured by the camera mounted on the launch vehicle. Actually speaking, on the core stage, you can see 2 of the rocket boosters.
Right. Are the cameras infrared?
This is a visible light camera.
Invisible light camera.
Yep.
At this moment?
No. At this moment, it's still too far from the Magpie Bridge 2. So at this moment, it still has the communication link between the Tianlian data relay satellite or with space tracking ships, such as Yuanwang series tracking ships on the Pacific Ocean. They are already in SMILE, so that means that the most risky part has already passed for the launch.
And they start talking and having some small chat over there.
Yeah.
It's a rewarding moment for the scientists.
Yeah. So I believe that we can see the big red screen soon.
Yeah.
It's our tradition.
Yeah, it is. It really is something that we're all looking forward to.
Yeah. Now you can see it's already more than half an hour now. So that is a very important feature for the launch of the Long March 5 or the Long March 3A series.
Right.
Because it needs a coaster phase that lasts very long.
And now let's hear some more insights from Mark McCorin, former senior advisor for science and exploration at the European Space Agency in the Netherlands. Thank you so much for joining us on our program. Now, as we are both watching for, as we're both waiting for that big moment, the announcement of the success of the launch mission, what aspects of Chang'e 6 lunar mission are you most looking forward to?
Well, as a scientist, it's an amazing thing to be able to go to the far side of the moon and bring samples back. It's very different from the near side of the moon, the piece of the moon we see all the time because of the way the moon is locked to the rotation of the Earth. It also will hopefully bring us some idea about the way that the moon was struck by these very large impactors, by asteroids, early in the solar system history, billions of years ago. Was that something that happened very quickly in one big bunch of impacts, or was that something that happened slowly? And by returning samples from that particular location, the South Pole Aitken Basin, we should actually be able to learn much more about the history of our solar system that way. So that's really exciting. But let me also say, congratulations, of course, to getting to this point now. Half an hour into the mission, it seems to be going extremely well.
And as you mentioned, it really is a very important mission for us to understand the formation, the evolution of the moon over a span of billions of years. And China, as we know, is also carrying international payload in this mission. It's been advocating international cooperation in space for a long time. What do you make of the cooperation between China and Europe, Mark?
Well, I think it's a good thing. I've been talking to some of my colleagues this morning, ESA colleagues who are out there in China at the launch, and hopefully I'll chat to them a little bit later on, and hopefully they will have seen that very, very beautifully as we did on the live stream. But bringing those instruments on board to do science, of course, is the main goal of this kind of cooperation, is to share the scientific knowledge. And this is something where, of course, we collaborate internationally. We collaborate with the United States, we collaborate with Russia, we collaborate with Japan, and we collaborate with China. We also have a mission which should be launched in the next year or so called SMILE, which is a collaboration between China and ESA, where that mission will be investigating the magnetic field of the Earth. And that's an important aspect which is linked to so-called space weather, where the impact of the sun on the Earth's atmosphere is something we want to study in more detail. So we just saw the launch contract for that was signed last week. That will be a European launcher with a European-Chinese payload. And what we just saw today is European parts on a Chinese-led mission to the moon. So I think that this scientific collaboration is, of course, very important. We should always keep in mind that space is a very political environment, of course, and there are all sorts of geopolitical issues in the background here. But as a scientist, I'm very happy to see this collaboration go forward.
Mark, let me also ask you this. I could see Chinese calligraphy hanging on the wall, and I'm pretty sure that you're familiar with the Chinese culture as well. And you must also know that the Chang'e is named after this legendary Chinese moon goddess. Do you also share this dream of lunar exploration, this passion, and of course renewed ambition to explore the moon?
I think it's something, of course, that's fascinated me throughout my life. I'm old enough that I was around when the Apollo missions went to the moon, and I've worked with many of the Apollo astronauts. I've been on tour with Buzz Aldrin, for example, who was on that very first mission with Neil Armstrong to the surface of the moon. And to see that come back now in recent years, of course, there is an element partly, again, of this geopolitical aspect, whereas it was the Soviet Union and the United States before. Now you have a much broader array of players in this game. And there's also this question about this exploitation that your guest there spoke about a bit earlier on, which was that exploration is driving the science, but the possibility of looking at the moon as a resource is another thing. I'm a little bit skeptical about making it a fully commercial thing. I'm not sure how that would work. And we do need to think about how we protect the resources as well, that it shouldn't be a free-for-all, that everybody can go and just get rich. The same applies to Mars. We don't know if there's life on Mars yet. Should we be going there with human beings until we've investigated it properly scientifically? So I think it's a very interesting time. I mean, if I'm right, as you said, the calligraphy behind me is the constellation of Orion, Li Hu Zhuo, if I remember correctly from one of my trips to China. And so I'm also very interested in looking well beyond our own solar system. So I've studied the constellation of Orion for many years in my career. And those dreams are definitely real. And that inspiration that space can bring, and then the collaboration that also encourages, I think is something we need to reflect back to Earth, collaborating to solve some of the challenges that were addressed earlier in your program, for example, nuclear fusion and how we solve the energy crisis. We're only going to survive on this planet by international collaboration, and we're not going to go and live on other planets very soon. So I think that's the important strand here, international collaboration for helping this planet. And lunar exploration is an exemplar for that.
Of course, we are seeing competition at a different degree, but it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, the discovery, the learning of the moon is certainly bringing benefits to all of humanity. Thank you so much, Mark, for sharing with us your insights. Well, the Chang'e 6 will carry equipment from France, Sweden, Italy, and Pakistan. It's part of China's international cooperation in space. A French instrument mounted on the lander will study the origin and dynamics of the lunar exosphere. CTTN's Natalie Carney talked to Pierre-Yves Meslin, a planetary scientist whose team invented the instrument.
For years, planetary scientist Pierre-Yves has been working on instruments destined for Mars. But the launch of China's Chang'e 6 spacecraft now puts him at the cutting edge of moon exploration. His invention, the detection of outgassing radon, or DORN, is set to become the first ever French instrument to be deployed to the surface of the moon.
officials, experts, and comrades. According to the Long March 5 data and the data and report from Beijing Aerospace Control Center, the Chang'e 6 probe has accurately entered the preset orbit, and solar panel unfolded successfully and functioning well. Now I declare the launch mission a complete success.
Bravo.
Big congratulations to our scientists and engineers and people who've involved in this history-making mission. And as you said, Professor Yang, the screen really turned from blue to red, and that's a tradition from the Flight Control Center here on the Earth. No matter how far our spacecrafts travel or how important the mission is, it always comes to this final moment of the announcement of the success of the mission.